All right, Dr. Rabbanit, Dr. Adina, we're not doing introduction, wrong introduction, but it's a pleasure to welcome you. You are making also your debut for Torah Motion. I believe you're the only, I don't know if you were born in Israel or just raised in Israel. Born in Israel. I think you're the only one
I
of our
was both.
both. You're the only one of our 10 speakers who's a sabra, so that's a special schut. And Dr. Sternberg teaches at Matan and at the Midrash Bar-Ilan University. And Vakasha, we have your full 29 minutes. You can go a few minutes over time. Okay, Vakasha.
Okay, no problem. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'll share a screen. I hope you guys will be able to see. Let me know that it works. 1 second. Oh, okay. Can you see?
Yeah, now we can see. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so our question today about Hanukkah is what exactly are we dedicating? When we say the word Hanukkah, we think of Chanukat HaMikdash, Chanukat HaMishkan, and what we're thinking about is dedicating something and we're consecrating it. And the question is, what exactly are we dedicating, or what dedication are we celebrating on these days of Hanukkah? So obviously this question is probably sounds like very a common question, and we all learned this and everybody knows this already, but we'll remind us of what we maybe know, maybe don't know. We all know, or maybe know, the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, Mai Chanukah, דתנו רבנן בכ"ה בכסלו יומי דחנוכה תמנע יעינון דלא למספד בהון ודלא להתענות בהון. We're talking about 8 days of Hanukkah that you're not allowed to fast and you're not allowed to eulogize on them. And then the Gemara asks why. This is a quote from Megillat Ta'anit, which tells us of all the holidays that were set during the Second Temple time. And the Gemara explains to us שכשנכנסו יוונים להיכל טימאו כל השמנים שבהיכל. So when the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they defiled all the oils that were in the sanctuary. וכשגברה מלכות בית חשמונאי וניצחום, when the Chasmonim monarchy overcame them and came out victorious, בימים ההם בזמן הזה בעזרת השם, בדקו ולא מצאו אלא פח אחד של שמן שהיה מונח בחותמו של כהן גדול, ולא היה בו אלא להדליק יום אחד. So they only found one cruse of oil, which was enough only for 1 day. נעשה בו נס והדליקו ממנו 8 ימים, קבעום ועשאום ימים טובים בהלל והודאה. So we had a miracle. We lit the candles for 8 days. The oil was enough for 8 days. And later years, we tried to reenact this or remember these 7 days with Hallel and Thanksgiving, etc. So I don't think this quite answered our question, because we're talking about 8 days of lighting candles because the oil was enough for 8 days. But again, what is the dedication here? What are we dedicating? What kind of Hanukkah are we doing here? And I think the answer appears in another text that also comes together with this Megillat Ta'anit, the Megillah that gives us a list of dates, of special days from Second Temple. From all of these special days, only 2 days, 2 events we still remember, which is the event of Hanukkah and the event of Purim. And after the list of all these special days and holidays, which it's very interesting. We all know that in Judaism, they tried to kill us. We won, let's eat. So in Megillat Ta'anit, we downplayed it a little bit. There was something bad. We overcame it. Let's not fast. Okay? So we're not all the way up to let's eat, but the way we celebrate things is we say, don't fast. Don't have a eulogy. So now the question is, after Megillat Ta'anit gives us this list of the holidays that we celebrate, we have a scholiast on Megillat Ta'anit. The scholiast gives explanations. There are different versions of these explanations. I put 2 kind of together, but the academic accuracy is not important for me right now, just to see the different ways that they've gone through the generations. And the first question is, מה ראו לעשות חנוכה 8 ימים? So we're assuming here that there's a Hanukkah, that there's a dedication, but the question is, why is it 8 days? So we got an answer to that in the Gemara, because in the Gemara, the answer was that there was a miracle for 8 days. But here we're going to get a little bit different answer. והלא חנוכה שעשה משה במדבר, לא עשה אלא 7 ימים. We know that a Hanukkah is usually 7 days. Moshe had 7 days of Hanukkah. שנאמר, ומפתח אוהל מועד לא תצאו 7 ימים וגומר, which were actually the 7 days of מילואים, the 7 days of preparation. ואומר, והיא מקריב ביום הראשון את קורבנו וגומר, בשביעי הקריב אפרים. So he's talking about the different קורבנות of the נשיאים. I'm not quite sure what it proves, but it's not that important right now. וכן מצינו בחנוכה שעשה שלמה, שלא עשה אלא 7 ימים, שנאמר, כי חנוכת המזבח עשו 7 ימים והחג 7 ימים. So in any case, I'm reading the text, but what's important is that Moshe Rabbeinu's Hanukkah, or 7 ימי המילואים, were 7 days, and Shlomo HaMelech's Hanukkah was 7 days. מה ראו לעשות חנוכה זו 8 ימים? So why do we have 8 days? Why do we have 8 days of Hanukkah? אלא בימי מלכות יוון. נכנסו בני חשמונאי להיכל. So we have the חשמונאים who come into the come into the temple. ובנו את המזבח וסדוהו בסיד. So they built the altar and they had to put on it plaster. וכל 7 הימים היו מתקנים בכלי שרת והיו מתעסקים 8 ימים. So actually it wasn't 7 days of dedicating the hall or the temple or the altar. It was 7 days of preparation that they had to work on rebuilding the Mikdash. In another version, it says, Bimei Yavan, the times of the Greeks, Nichnesu bnei Chashmonai lehar habayit, so they entered Temple Mount. V'shiv'a shipudim shel barzel hayu beyedehem, v'chibrum bimbat, so they had these skewers that they put together. V'hayu mitaskin be'en kol shmona. So it's actually not really a Chanukah. It's not a dedication. It's not really starting to work in the Mikdash, but actually starting to working on the Mikdash, taking care of the Mikdash, building the Mikdash. But in any case, whether we're talking about the story in the Gemara, or we're talking about the story of, okay, I'll try to learn the sources if I can. I'm not sure I can. I don't think I can. I apologize. Anyway, but whether we're talking about lighting the candles for 8 days, or we're talking about working on the Mikdash for 8 days, getting it ready for the Chanukah, I think we can all agree that our focus here is on the Mikdash, be it the altar or the menorah, right? Chanukat mizbeach, which is what we like singing, or anyway, Chanukata, or dedicating the menorah. I don't think we're actually dedicating the menorah. I think we'd give it a new kind of word. We'd call it a Chanukah is not necessarily dedicating, but more activating. If we think about what happened when Moshe Rabbeinu had Chanukat Mishkan, he started activating it. He started working it. He prepared, or the people who were working on it prepared it for many months. And then we had 7 days of starting it working. So also in the times of the Chashmonaim, we're activating the Mishkan again. We're activating the Mikdash again. We're activating the menorah again. We're getting everything ready. I think the story that comes together with Megillat Ta'anit tries to tell us, look, in the times of Moshe, we also really, even though we're talking about 7 days, we had 7 plus 1 day. We had 7 days of getting ready. And then we had the final 8th day in which we got Shechina. So we really had 8 days, B'yom HaShmini, during the times of Moshe. So maybe we're hinting at that. But in any case, it's obvious that our focus is on the Mikdash. Now, this shouldn't be surprising. We talk about it, we read about it, we tell about it, etc. I want us to notice that when we go to the halacha, we can find that our focus on the Mikdash and on the world of Kedusha is very, very dominant. Okay? We have a Braita, a Tannaitic source. It says, Tanu Rabbanan, Mitzvat Chanuka ner ushuvito. So we know that the Hanukkah candle is one candle for each household. V'amehadrin ner lechol echad ve'echad. Okay, so those who are meticulous have a candle for each one in the household. V'amehadrin min hamehadrin. בית שמאי אומרים יום ראשון מדליק 8, מכאן ואילך פוחת והולך, ובית הלל אומרים יום ראשון מדליק 1, מכאן ואילך מוסיף הולך. So many people already know this machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Do you start big and go and diminish, or do you start small and you go and make it bigger? Now, if we stopped here, I think we could have plenty of drushes about why Beit Shammai wants us to start big and go lesser and lesser, why Beit Hillel start with one and grow and grow. And we could give a lot of really, really nice ideas. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel didn't. They just gave us a halacha. Now we need to figure out what is the meaning of this halacha. And then we get to the Amoraim. Okay. Amar Ula, so Ula says, Pligi batrei Amorae b'ma'arava. We have two Amoraim in Israel. Okay. I see people already adding their ideas to why we mosif veholech or pochet veholech. I can't read it right now, I'm sorry. But Ula tells us that the Amoraim had a debate. Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin v'Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. So we have these two Amoraim. אחד אמר תמה דבית שמאי כנגד ימים הנכנסים, ותמה דבית הלל כנגד ימים היוצאים. So one Amora says, you know what? One does a countdown and one does a count up, and that's it. No big drasha, just one is talking about how many days are left, and then one is talking about how many days we already had. I think maybe one could compare it to Sfira to Omer, where we're adding days, versus when you're getting ready for a trip and you count down days, right? Not a very halachic precedent, but okay. It's just how we're counting down days. But the other Amora said, V'chad amar, Tama de Beit Shammai, keneged parei hachag. So another Amora says, Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai are arguing over precedents. Are we going to the precedent of the korbanot that we bring on Sukkot, that we start with 14, 13, etc., etc.? We go down. That's what Beit Shammai say. Or do we go according to the principle of Malin Bakodesh Ben Moridim, that when you're in a world of Kedusha, you need to keep on expanding the Kedusha and growing the Kedusha? You learn it from the story of Korach and what they did there, but we're not going to get into that right now. So what do we see? We see one Amora says it's just a matter of how we decide to count. We count up, we count down, doesn't really matter. But another Amora says, no, it comes from the world of Kedusha. We're focusing on the world of the Mikdash, the world of the Mishkan. So where are we taking our precedents from? We're taking them from Korbanot, or we're taking them from the world of vessels that were used in the Mishkan that need to become holier and holier. And obviously, where we're taking our ideas from are from the world of Kedusha. What's interesting is when you go to the next part of the Sugya, we have a small story. I kind of like it. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei zkenim hayu b'tzeidan. There were two old people in Sidon. Echad asa kebeit Shammai ve'echad asa kebeit Hillel. So each one had their own minhag. זה נותן טעם לדבריו כנגד פרי החג, וזה נותן טעם לדבריו דמעלים בקודש ואין מורידים. So when we go out to the people, to the two old men sitting on the sidelines, and we say, well, why are you doing what you're doing? They're going to the world of Kedusha. They're not talking about going up, going down, whatever. They're going to the precedent of Kedusha. I think this also affects the way we grasp and understand the lighting of the candles, as we all sing Hanerot halalu kodesh hem ve'en lanu reshut lishtamesh behem. It's so obvious to us that these candles are kodesh, and it has to do with these precedents of Kedusha. Not all the Moraim think that you're not allowed to use the candles. Not everyone thinks that these nerot are kodesh. Okay, there are plenty of sugiyot that actually say they're not, they're just candles, right? But we, the people, have made the choice to see it as kedusha, as something coming from the mikdash, from the mishkan, etc. Okay, now all this is nice, but I think there's also an underlying current here that's trying to say also something a little bit different. If we go back to the beginning of the sugya, we'll see that the first definition that we have here is Tanu Rabbanan, mitzvat Chanuka nerishu veito. Wait. What's the connection between Hanukkah and a person's home or the household? Okay? The first definition, before we start counting up and counting down, that the first definition is the connection between the candle and the household. Now, this isn't coincidental. We'll see it later on in different halachot, the connection between the Hanukkah candle and the house. Okay, another braita, Tanu Rabbanan, Ner Chanuka mitzvah lanicha al petach beito mibachutz. Okay, the mitzvah is to put the Hanukkah candle. By the way, the Gemara doesn't know the word Chanukiah or Hanukkah menorah. Okay, it's a candle. If you want to be a mehader, you can add candles, but the basic is one candle. Ner Chanukah, it's a mitzvah to put it on the entrance of one's house from the outside. Im hayad dar ba'aliyah, if you live upstairs, menicha b'chalon hasmucha lirshut harabim. So if you live upstairs, you put it in the window so the people can see. Uvishat hasakana, menicha al shulchano v'dayo. In time of fear, of danger, you can leave it on the table and that's enough. Okay. Now, the question is, I think, together with this notion of the connection between Hanukkah and the Mikdash and the world of Kedusha, we also have this notion that there's a story that we want to tell the world. Pirsumei Nisa. Pirsumei Nisa, right? The Mikdash is a very national institution. Wouldn't it be much more logical that we do this mitzvah in our national institutions, that we do it, that the mitzvah would be in the Beit Knesset or in the outside, in the city hall or the city parks or the courtyards or wherever we can find outside to do Pirsumei Nisa. And interestingly, we all know this, but I don't know if we always think about it. The mitzvah is to put it in our homes. Now, there's a certain dilemma here. Do we want to tell the world or do we want it to be connected to our home? So if you ask Rashi, Rashi will say mi bachutz, mishum pirsumei nisa. I agree. We're trying to spread the light, okay? Velo ברשות הרבים, אלא בחצרו, שבתיהן היו פתוחים לחצר. We're not putting it in the public domain. If I have a house and there's the courtyard, I put it at the entrance to my house. Who's going to see it? The people in the courtyard. Not many people. But it's more important that it be connected to my house than that many people see it. Now Tosfot won't agree with Rashi. They'll say, mitzvah la'anicha al petach beito mibachutz. It's a mitzvah to put it on the house from the outside. Umayri, and it's dealing with a case, that's only if you don't have a yard. It's only if you put it on the entrance to the public domain. אבל אם יש חצר לפני הבית, מצווה להניח על פתח החצר. If you have a yard, go out from your yard and get to the public domain. So it's obvious that Tosfot, okay, have this notion that there's a certain connection to our house, but it's very, very important that the world, the people, the nation, everybody out there sees the light and hears the story. But what is Rashi thinking? Rashi says it's more important that it be connected to the house. Why is it so important to be connected to the house? Who cares about my house on Hanukkah? Hanukkah has to do with the Mikdash. Hanukkah has to do with winning a war. Hanukkah has to do with miracles being done all over the place. What's the connection to my house? Who cares about my house? And Rashi even says, if I need to decide, I'll do it in my house. I won't do it outside, which is a very big question. But it also, you can see that if I'm in the second floor, I'll put it in my window that's connected to my house. And in times of danger, my house is enough. Even inside the house, I don't really need a pirsumei nisa. My house is enough. We'll see this in another source. אמר רבא, נר חנוכה מצווה להניחה בטפח הסמוכה לפתח. So Rabba says, not only does it need to be at the entrance to your house, it needs to be really adjacent within what tefach. והיכא מנחלי, where am I going to put it? רב אחא ברי דרבא אמר מימין, רב שמואל מדפתי אמר משמאל. So we can either put it on the right, we can put it on the left. And then the Gemara decides, והלכתה, what's the halacha? משמאל. כדי שתהיה נר חנוכה משמאל ומזוזה מימין. So I'm going to put it on the left to have the Hanukkah candle on the left and the mezuzah on the right. What's the connection to the mezuzah? Where did the mezuzah come from? What does that have to do with anything? Okay, I brought you the psukim of the mezuzah. Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha ubisharecha. Mezuzah has to do with the house. Okay, it makes me feel that the Gemara is trying to connect here between the mitzvah of the Chanukah and or ner Chanukah and the mitzvah of the mezuzah. It's trying to say, what's the mezuzah doing? The mezuzah is kind of a declaration of the house. The house declares Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now, if I was a Karaite, which I'm not, I would say every house should have on top of the doorpost a big sign saying Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay, but I'm not a Karaite and I'm a halachic Jew, so I buy a mezuzah and we put it up on the doorpost. But anyone who sees this mezuzah knows that my house is declaring Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So in a sense, when we say put the Hanukkah candles at the entrance to the house, we're saying it's not a story of Pirsume Nisa, of every person trying to spread the light wherever they can. It's a house story. This is a story of a house lighting up a candle. But why is that so important? I must say that this image of having the Ner Hanukkah on one hand and the mezuzah on the other hand also reminds me of, if we go back to the times of Egypt, of Velakhu et Adam v'natnu al shtei mezuzot ve'al hamashkof, right? When times of Egypt, where they take the blood and they mark their post, their doorpost, to say, here's a house of a Jew, here's a house of someone who has chosen to worship God, believes in redemption, etc., right? It comes to mark a house. So it's interesting that we've sort of turned or re-understanding the mitzvah of Hanukkah as not just spreading the light toward outwards, but as marking a house, as a house that tells a story. Now that sounds really weird, but how does this connect to this whole idea of Hanukkah, of Mikdash, of Mishkan? Where does this fit in? Now, when we go to the book of the Maccabees, some call it Maccabees, Cheshmonaim, all kinds, we can see that when you look at the decrees of the Greeks, some of these decrees were indeed connected to the Mikdash, right? But not all of them. Some of them had to do with worshiping God, and now we're leaving God and worshiping other idols. But it had to do with a whole aspect of worshiping God, which has to do with the Mikdash, but doesn't always have to do with the Mikdash. Let's give a few examples. Okay, we're talking about unity in the previous shir. Okay, so Antiochus wrote to all the whole kingdom that everybody should be one people. Everybody's one people, then they all need to do the same things, right? Velazov ish et chukav. Okay, let's all leave our other laws and only worship his laws. V'ye'otu kol ha'amim lasot kidvar hamelech. And they're all doing what the king said. וירוצו רבים מישראל בעבודתו והקריבו לפסילים ויחללו את השבת. Okay, so we have lots of people doing what the king said and sacrificing to the idols and leaving the Shabbos. וישלח המלך ספרים. I'm not sure that the translation here is exact. Is lined up, but okay. וישלח המלך ספרים ביד מלאכים אל ירושלים ולערי יהודה ללכת אחרי חוקים זרים לארץ. So the king sent out letters with messengers to go according to different laws. So we start with ולהשבית עולות וזבח ונסך מן המקדש ולחלל שבתות וחגים. So on one hand, we're taking away things that have to do with the mikdash, with the altars, etc., but also Shabbos, also the holidays. We're having both realms that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the mikdash, but we're also dealing with what happens in people's houses. Okay, okay, so we're also desecrating and the mikdash, livnot bamot, but then the bamot, they switch them, and that happens all over the place. I'm going to line 48, ולהניח את בניהם הרעילים, ולשקץ את נפשם, ככל טומאה ותועבה, כדי שישכחו את התורה וימירו את כל החוקים. So it's not only the mikdash, it's also what happens in people's houses. It's what happens in people's families. They don't want the kids to be circumcised. They don't want people to be keeping Shabbos. וימיתו את הנשים אשר מלו את בניהם לפי הפקודה. They would kill the women who circumcised their children. ויתלו את העוללים מצוואר אמותיהם. They would hang the babies that would be circumcised. ואת ביתן ואת אשר מלו אותם, and they would ruin the houses of the people who were keeping God's mitzvot. So what we can see here is that during the times of the Hashmonaim, we're not only fighting over the mikdash. It's not only the mikdash. Mikdash is a symbol, but we're fighting for the sanctity and the ability of each and every house to keep the mitzvot. Now, if you go on later on to Yerushalmi will talk about Barishona gazru shmad b'Yehuda, that there was persecution in Yehuda, and one of the things was that they would rape the women when they got married. Okay, this is a way of desecrating people's homes, desecrating the sanctity of a home, not only the sanctity of the mikdash. Okay, now this might not be historically correct, but it's the way this era was perceived during the generations as not only a time of a threat to the Beit HaMikdash, but as a threat to people's homes. And therefore, when we're celebrating our victory, when we're celebrating our being saved from these decrees, what we're also saying is our homes were saved. Now, I think this is a focus on saying the Kedusha is not only in the Mikdash, and the Kedusha that was being hurt and taken away from us wasn't only in the Mikdash, it was also the Kedusha of people's homes. And not only that, the story, I know you've dealt with it today, I don't know what was said, but the story of the woman with her 7 children, that none of them were willing to bow down to the idol, and they were all killed in the process. What this story is telling us is that not only was the salvation something that came into every person's home and saved the Kedusha of each and everyone's home, but also the ability to fight came from within the homes. When a mother teaches her children to be faithful to God, and they are all willing to go and give up their lives for their values, that's something that in the end is going to bring us victory. That's what's going to save us in the end. So again, when we're asking ourselves, what are we dedicating? What Kedusha, what are we sanctifying? What Chanuka are we doing? As a Chanukat Habayit, the immediate reaction is Chanukat Beit HaMikdash. But I think Chazal are also pointing us to Chanukat Habayit of each and every person's home, of putting the Kedusha into the home, of dedicating everyone's home to bringing the light. But then it's very important that each home says, I'm also a God-fearing home, and I'm also a God-fearing home, and I also believe, and we're believers. Just like people, put a flag on their houses nowadays, or things like that. Here's another home that's patriotic and for the thing. And I'll just give one last note. The halachas of Chanuka were brought in Masechet Shabbat in the chapter that talks about Hadlakat Neil Shabbat, meaning Hilchot Chanuka come together with Hilchot Shabbat, with the Shabbos candle, which represents Shalom Bayit, which represents bringing the Kedusha into one's home. And I think what Chazal are trying to teach us, that there are two realms of Kedusha, the Mikdash, which we're happy that was reenacted, etc., but also the Kedusha of people's homes, that we bring the Kedusha into our house, the salvation brought Kedusha into our house, but also the Kedusha starts from our house and from our belief and our chinuch and Chanuka, and from there, we can also go out into the world. So that's it for today. I hope we can all be zoche. I'll look a bit at the comments.
Okay, thank you very much. A
Okay.
pleasure.